Okay, so imagine this. You're filling out a form and you're told you have to pick a religion, even if you don't really follow one. Sounds strange, right? Well, today we're diving into a really landmark court decision in India that basically changed everything. It gave every single citizen the right to define their own identity, or, lack of one, completely free from government pressure.
So, how did this all come about? Well, here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start with the personal fight for identity that kicked this whole thing off. Then, we'll get into the landmark ruling itself and what made it so huge. After that, we'll look at the constitutional right that underpins all of this. And I'll even walk you through the practical steps on how you can actually declare no religion. And to wrap things up, we'll touch on a pretty thorny issue, the complication that comes up with caste.
All right, to really get why this is such a big deal, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to talk about the people whose personal fight for their own identity actually sparked this entire movement.
So it really all boils down to one simple but incredibly powerful question. Can the government force you to have a religion? That was the core of a legal challenge filed way back in 2010. The argument was pretty straightforward. No, they can't. Religion just shouldn't be a mandatory box you have to tick on a form.
Now, the people who actually brought this case forward were in a pretty unique spot. See, they believed in the teachings of Jesus Christ, but they didn't really identify as Christian in the traditional sense or with any other organized religion for that matter. So they were kind of stuck with no box to check that felt right. And what they wanted was actually pretty simple. All they asked for was for the government to officially recognize their status as people of no religion and to publish that in the official Gazette. But when they tried, the government basically said no. They were refused, which pretty much amounted to being told you have to belong somewhere. But, of course, that refusal wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. It pushed them to take their fight all the way to the Bombay High Court. And what happened next? Well, the court delivered a judgment that had massive consequences for, well, everyone. Now, this wasn't some quick overnight thing. It actually took 4 long years for this case to make its way through the legal system. But finally, on September 23, 2014, the decision came down from Justices A.S. Oka and A.S. Chandorkar. And the verdict? It was an absolute game changer. The court sided completely with the petitioners. They ruled that no government authority, nobody, can compel you to state your religion. I mean, this wasn't just some small win. It set a hugely powerful new precedent for personal freedom in India.
The court's logic here was just so simple and so powerful. They weren't trying to invent some new right out of thin air. As the ruling itself says, they were just confirming a right that was already there, basically hidden in plain sight, right inside the Constitution of India.
Okay, so let's dig into the why behind all this. Let's look at the legal foundation here, because it all builds on one of the most fundamental freedoms that's guaranteed to every single citizen.
The entire ruling really hinges on this one core concept, freedom of conscience. And what the court did, which was so brilliant, was interpret this to mean something really crucial. The freedom to believe in any religion you want has to, by definition, include the freedom not to believe in any religion at all.
And the court made it absolutely crystal clear. This is not some legal loophole or a technicality. It is an explicit, guaranteed protection for atheists, for agnostics, for anyone who just chooses to live without a religious label. The state has a fundamental duty to respect that choice, period.
Okay, so this is all great in theory, but what does it actually mean for you, in the real world? How can a citizen in Maharashtra actually go about exercising this right today? Let's get practical.
All right, so even though there isn't one single dedicated no religion form just yet, the court's ruling has paved the way for 2 clear options. First, you can go online to the Apple Sarkar portal and apply for what's called a Gazette publication. Or you can go the more direct route and just submit a simple written application to your local district collector or tehsildar.
And no matter which path you end up taking, the documents you'll need are pretty standard stuff. You're going to need some ID proof, like an Aadhaar or PAN card, something for address proof, like a utility bill, and a couple of passport-sized photos. But the most important piece of the puzzle is a notarized affidavit. That's the legal document where you officially declare your status as no religion.
All right, so the right to have no religion seems pretty clear-cut now, right? But here's where things get a bit more complicated, because we have to talk about the equally sensitive issue of caste. Now, it's really important to understand this. Declaring no religion is not the same thing as declaring no caste. Different high courts have actually taken slightly different approaches here. With the Bombay High Court ruling, leaving the religion or caste column blank is an option. But other courts, like the Madras High Court, have sometimes required more formal proof that a person has really and truly broken away from their past affiliations.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Ultimately, it's this. The Bombay High Court ruling is all about empowering the individual. It draws a very clear line in the sand. It affirms that your religious identity, or your lack of one, is your choice. It is not a state mandate.
And that really leaves us with a fascinating and pretty profound question to think about. This whole ruling, it's not just about a box on a government form, is it? It goes much deeper. It's about the very nature of identity in a modern, secular society. So what does it truly mean for all of us when our identity becomes less about what we inherit and more about what we choose for ourselves?